Hello again. We're Tessa and John. 6 days ago, we left Georgia, and now we're waking up in an empty pasture on the edge of the Colorado Plains. We're rolling full-time across America with our pug Toffee and our two cats, Gabi and Gwen, in our Thor Majestic rig. This episode, we take you deep into Manitou Springs for high-altitude trains, retro arcades, and a roadside attraction with a dark manufactured history. Let's get moving. We pulled out of our harvest host around noon since we didn't want to get to the RV park too early. The drive today isn't too long, but the landscape will change drastically from the flat eastern plains of Colorado to climbing into the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. We're staying at an RV park a little outside of Manitou Springs called Rocky Top Motel and Campground. It looked like it was going to be a rainy afternoon, so we decided to stay in and get some rest before we ramp up for tomorrow. Bright and early next morning, we boarded the historic Broadmoor Manitou and Pikes Peak Cog Railway.
All right, are you excited? Good. Let's go.
We're starting at an altitude of 6,580 feet here at the base in Manitou Springs. But as we climb through Pikes Peak National Forest, we'll be reaching inclines of up to 25%. Really, it's a 19th century engineering marvel that uses a rack and pinion gear system to claw its way up gradients so steep that a standard train would just slide right back down the mountain. The new trains are also the world's first all-aluminum locomotives, making them as light as possible for climbing and descending the mountain. We're now approaching the halfway point, which was once home to a small 22-room inn for hikers. The original hotel was demolished a century ago and replaced by the Ruxton Hydroelectric Plant and Caretaker's House. It's no longer in use, but the body of water next to it is fed by Lake Moraine higher up the mountain, which provides drinking water for Colorado Springs. We're climbing more than 14,000 feet, making this not only America's highest altitude railway, but also the highest, longest cog railway in the world. Suddenly, the tree line starts to surrender, revealing the true reward for your ticket price. These panoramic vistas are spectacular enough to steal what little breath you have left. Whoa. These are the views that inspired Catherine Lee Bates in 1893 to write the words to America the Beautiful. And as we climb higher above the tree line, it feels like the world drops away to reveal the breathtaking expanse of Colorado's Front Range and the high-altitude waters of Lake Moraine. As our train pushes over the crest of the mountain, we reach the geological and environmental boundary, where the subalpine forest ends and the tundra begins. Over there on the right side of the track sits Windy Point, a historic stone cabin built alongside the railway's construction as a shelter for track workers. Sitting just 2,000 feet below the summit, sometimes trains are turned back at this point due to extremely high winds that easily exceed 60 to 80 miles per hour. Luckily, we had good weather and continued on. This railway wasn't easily built. In 1889, industrialist Zalman Simmons set out to tame Pikes Peak. Over the next 2 years, hundreds of immigrant workers endured brutal alpine conditions to physically carve these tracks out of solid granite. Using Swiss gear designs and sheer physical grit, this tireless crew laid out the rails that still carry travelers to the clouds today, turning a grueling wilderness trek into an American engineering marvel. At the top is the Pikes Peak Summit Visitor Center, offering staggering, unobstructed views of the American West. This is North America's highest altitude train station, And stepping onto this windswept platform feels like standing on the very top of the world, where the endless plains meet the jagged peaks of the Continental Divide. And, if you follow your nose inside, the world's highest culinary anomaly, the legendary Pikes Peak donut. They've been frying up this exact recipe since 1916. Because of the extreme low pressure, water boils at just 186 degrees, forcing leavening agents to expand at hyperspeed. The recipe is strictly high altitude. Take them down to sea level and watch them flatten into inedible lead weights. Long before this peak was a line item on a vacation itinerary, it was called Tava, or Sun Mountain. For millennia, the Ute people lived in its shadow, climbing these exact ridges not to conquer a peak, but to be closer to the Creator. They climbed it out of respect, centuries before we built a train to commodify it. But you can only stay on the top of the world for so long before the cold and lack of oxygen start to catch up with you. It was time to pack up what remaining brain cells we had left into the aluminum tube, lock into those iron teeth, and let gravity do the heavy lifting all the way back down to Manitou. I'm just really glad we didn't try to drive the Fiat up here. Now that we're back down the mountain, it's time to explore the charming town of Manitou Springs. Hi, everyone. There's a fizz here in the air in Manitou Springs. It's coming from the ground, bubbling up through the limestone just like it has for centuries. This town has a wild past, but we'll get to that later. First things first, I go absolutely feral for soda water, so we set out to hunt down Manitou's famous carbonated springs. There are 8 public fountains across Manitou. You can grab a map from the Chamber of Commerce on Manitou Avenue, but we wanted to play it more like a scavenger hunt, letting our curiosity and the occasional weird smell lead the way. Here's a handy map from PBS of all the locations. We started at Shoshan Spring. Pro tip, make sure to bring your own water bottle or cup so you're not using your hands like a chump. Luckily, we had a collapsible water bottle on us.
Hey.
These springs are the result of ancient rainwater soaking into the ground miles away, sinking deep into the earth and picking up carbon dioxide and minerals under massive pressure. The taste isn't for everyone. You're tasting the Earth's crust after all. Sulfur, iron, and soda all mixed up into one pressurized, bubbly package.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Every fountain has a different recipe based on which rock layers it passed through, which is why Shoshan was a bit of a minerally punch to the face, while Cheyenne Springs here has more of a refreshing, light and bubbly baseline.
Ooh, I like that one. That's good.
Yeah, it is good.
Kind of just tastes like a open can of pamplemousse liqueur.
We only managed to track down 4 of the 8 springs. This is Wheeler Spring, which tasted refreshing and kind of earthy with a metallic bite. Stratton was my least favorite since it smelled like rotten eggs and tasted oddly spicy.
It just smells kind of funny. Yeah, it smells a lot like sulfur.
But even if it's an acquired taste, this water changed everything for this town. To the Tavawachi band of the Ute tribe, these springs were a sacred connection to Sinawaf, believing the effervescent waters to be an active concentration of life-giving energy from their creator. But by the 1850s, settlers used treaties to push the Nuchi out, clearing the way for a town named Manitou, which was a marketing stunt in its own right, using an Algonquin word from the East Coast to make the water sound more exotic. They started bottling it, shipping it off, and selling it as a cure-all. It's a strange evolution, from a spiritual source for the Nuchi to a wellness retreat for the wealthy, all revolving around the same underground fizz. Today, the miracle cure hype has faded, but the town's eccentric spirit still stuck around. It's a place that's always been a little bit out there, and no places prove that better than the local shops.
I think it was the cauldron that I saw.
The Cauldron is an absolute must-stop if you're into the occult or just love a witchy aesthetic.
It's weird to see ones with Joe Rogan's face.
And if you're looking to dive even deeper, Anna's Apothecary is right around the corner. Fully stocked with homespun tonics, tinctures, salves, and elixirs. We grabbed some deep breath extract to help our lungs handle the Colorado altitudes. But our trip to Manitou wouldn't be complete without a stop to the Penny Arcade, a nostalgic treasure trove of games that feels frozen in time. It actually started in the early 1930s as a bingo parlor under Jack Kearns. But when the law changed and bingo was outlawed, it transformed into this sprawling arcade. Now, where are the classic Midway games?
I love T-ball. Hey! You wanna play this? Oh! Yeah, I got them all!
All this Manitou weirdness has been great, but we need to refuel and have some lunch. We drove a few miles over to Colorado Springs to check out a roadside attraction that's been on my bucket list for a while. It's a restaurant built entirely inside a 1953 Boeing KC-97 tanker. Welcome to the Airplane Restaurant. It's definitely not your typical diner experience. After pre-boarding check-in, we were escorted to our seats by the flight crew. It made it kind of hard to focus on the menu when you were staring at a literal jet engine outside your window. I got the bison burger, which was good, but a tad overcooked. But the real highlight was getting to poke around the cockpit after we finished eating. It's a cool time capsule, and you can play with all the analog dials and flick switches, so you can feel firsthand what it might have felt like piloting this thing. Bright and early next morning, we descended from Manitou back towards Colorado Springs to visit one of the best city parks in America, the Garden of the Gods. This park is the breathtaking result of millions of years of geological forces and a human history that stretches back more than 3,000 years. Driving in, it feels like you're entering a different world, a realm dominated by 300-foot-tall sandstone spires that look exactly like the petrified forms of the giants and monsters described in the Ute legend. Stone sentinels cast into the earth by the Great Spirit to stop them from destroying the earth. So with Toffee leading the way, we set out to discover what makes this place one of the most iconic landscapes in Colorado.
Full of rocks! Check out the rocks!
We zipped around the park in our Fiat, and even though I'd seen photos, actually driving through these red rock formations is a completely different experience. We're sticking mostly to the Three Graces Loop Trail.
I want to go between.
It's a shorter trail that still hits the big formations, but without being too much for Toffee. Even after 3 days of acclimating to the altitude, a short trek is still enough to remind my lungs that oxygen is a limited commodity up here. Oops, sorry. Where did that come from? Just off the main loop, there's a small unpaved trail leading to the Sleeping Giant viewpoint. Toffee was in full adventure pug mode and ready to lead us up. After taking a minute to catch our breaths, we finished our climb to the view. From here, there's one of the best, clearest perspectives of Pikes Peak in the entire park. The view was so clear that you could see the summit house at the top and a patch of snow. Crazy that we were up there just yesterday. It's absolutely wild to imagine that 70 million years ago, this entire landscape was submerged under an inland sea, a prehistoric aquatic world that eventually transformed into the geological anomaly we see today. It's a human habit to try and tame the landscape with language. We take these ancient, towering monoliths, and in an attempt to make sense of their beauty, we give them these wonderfully mystic names. As we get closer to the Three Graces, I understand why these formations have gripped human imaginations for so long. They're named after the Charities from Greek mythology, the goddesses of charm, beauty, and creativity. And standing amongst these towering, elegant sandstone spires, they almost look like massive giantesses in dance. Look at me projecting. I mean, what do you see when you look at them? It's hard not to get lost in the story of it all, but we've got more ground to cover. So we dropped Toffee back off at the RV and made a break for Manitou Cliff Dwellings, a place I regret not doing more research on before visiting. I really wish I'd known how polarizing this place was before I walked in. It's marketed as an authentic look at ancestral Puebloan life, but it's actually just a hollow facsimile. They took stones from a legitimate flatland pueblo, tore it apart, and reassembled it here as a roadside attraction. It was never a cliff dwelling to begin with. It's only afterwards that I realized that we'd been grifted. For over a century, this site has peddled historical BS, profiting off of stolen legacy. Thousands of visitors walk through here every year, completely oblivious to the fact that they're participating in a massive distortion of history. The Pueblo people never lived in this part of Colorado. Their history belongs to the Four Corners region, including Mesa Verde, and eventually settling in the Rio Grande Valley before separating into separate pueblos. The artifacts displayed here belong to living people, their descendants. Back in the early 1900s, the founders of this place convinced themselves they were saving history from looters by looting an ancient site for themselves. They dismantled the Blankard ruin, a legitimate flatland pueblo that was never a cliff dwelling to begin with, and hauled it here by train to build this replica just to cash in on the cliff dweller craze. In the process, they destroyed the original site's context forever. Founder Bill Crosby created a blueprint inspired by Mesa Verde and constructed a facsimile using materials and techniques unavailable to the ancestral Puebloans. They even added broken pottery to the mix, further altering the original appearance. Their official website does disclose the relocation, yet it still claims the dwellings are authentic. It's a step up from their 1907 brochure, which falsely claimed the cliff dwellers' extinction due to a volcanic eruption and denied any Pueblo connection at all. TBH, it feels a little cringe looking back at this footage now, seeing how much fun I was having. Just a month before this trip, I was saving points of interest on a Google map, completely unaware of this shady history. Like, I knew the structures had been relocated, but I naively bought into the preservation angle, not realizing I was falling for the exact same tourist trap engineered for the travelers in the early 1900s, built purely to cash in on the heavy traffic flowing between the Garden of the Gods and Pikes Peak. It's hard to shake how deeply problematic this tourist trap felt. Between still using outdated terms like Anasazi and Indian, while displaying displaced artifacts and peddling false narratives, the red flags seem so clearly obvious after the fact. The thing is, perpetuating these contradictions does cause real-world harm to the modern Pueblo communities today. If you want to honor the true history, skip this historical mess and head to Mesa Verde National Park to experience the real deal instead. But as we finish up our adventures here in Manitou, I can't help but reflect on everything we've done over these short 3 days, and the ways our journey may have mirrored travelers of the early 1900s. Just like those first tourists who rushed off the train to pack their schedules with scenic views and roadside attractions, we too tried to cram as much as we could into our short few days here. And the adventures in Colorado don't end here. Tomorrow we take the long scenic drive to Glenwood Springs, another town with its own historical waters and a different kind of high altitude thrill. And if you liked this video, please don't forget to feed the algorithm and like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time!